the reason why it's important to consider acoustics in the first place. There's two main things that we're looking at. One is well-being, so how comfortable a space actually is, and the other is productivity. So on the well-being side of things, we're used to planning for light quality, having the right amount of light in the space, having as much natural light as possible. We plan for air quality in terms of good ventilation, temperature control. So just like we plan for light, just like we plan for air, we need to plan for sound quality as well, because it is going to have an impact on how people experience the space. I'm sure everyone here at some point has been to a very noisy restaurant. You don't want to be in there for longer than 40 minutes. You eat your food and you leave straight away because of the stress from all of the sound. Obviously, offices, you can't necessarily do that. You're often expected to stay there the whole day, and having too many hard surfaces reflecting the sound is going to increase the noise levels, and that's going to make people more physically stressed and psychologically stressed, and that can also impact absenteeism, so how often they're actually sick and away from the office. So on the well-being side of things, it's about managing the noise levels so the space is more comfortable. On the productivity side, there it's about reducing conversational distractions. A lot of the conversation that we have about productivity nowadays focuses on productivity tools. So height adjustable desks, having multiple monitors. While those things can help, they don't necessarily guarantee that you're going to be productive. The connection between acoustics and productivity is much more fundamental, in that if you think what the core component of being productive is, it's your ability to focus and concentrate. And that applies to anything, whether it's work, you're typing or reading an email, whether you're cooking a meal, whether you're reading a book. Your ability to do that activity efficiently and effectively is largely going to depend on how much you can focus and concentrate. So focus and concentration, absolutely critical. The biggest threat to focus and concentration is distraction. So a lot of us can be distracted by our phones. The most common type of distraction is conversational distractions. So you're in the office and you're hearing other people talk or have a conversation. That's really something that's going to impact your focus and your concentration. So Julian Treasure, who's quite a famous acoustician, he cited that employees can be up to 66% less productive if you're exposed to just one nearby conversation. And the reason for that is, from a language and evolutionary perspective, your brain is hardwired to pay attention to human speech. Your brain is very similar to a computer in that it's constantly processing information. We receive that information through our senses, and your brain, it needs to process and organize that information. So a lot of what it does is all of that information that's coming in, your brain at an unconscious level takes that information and it puts it in one of two buckets. The first bucket is irrelevant information. So that's information that your brain recognizes this is not important, so you don't need to be aware of it. And then there's relevant information. So a good example of the irrelevant information is we can actually all hear the traffic outside if you listen carefully. But a moment before I said it, none of you were listening to the traffic. Your ears were still hearing it, but your brain recognized that this was irrelevant information, so it filtered it out. Whereas language is the exact opposite. It doesn't matter if you're a part of the conversation, if it's relevant to you. If you can make out the words and sentences of what someone's saying, your brain goes, oh, that's a conversation, and it tries to catch your attention and force it into your field of awareness. So I often say to people, if you've had other people say to you that you're nosy and you like listening to other people's conversations, you can tell them it's not your fault. It's just the way the brain is designed. So for us, a big part of good acoustics, managing noise levels, but also looking at how we can improve speech privacy. We can improve speech privacy, we can minimize distractions. If we can minimize distractions, we can help people focus and concentrate. If they can focus and concentrate, they'll be more productive. So it's very important to understand that having the good acoustics is not a luxury, it's an investment in your human capital, your workforce, and it's an investment in having an office that's actually well designed to promote focus and concentration. Right, in terms of understanding the sound, so it's effectively a form of energy. When people speak, the sound is going outwards in every direction all at once. As it reaches those hard surfaces, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, it gets reflected back into the space. So the bigger the space, the more hard surfaces, the more reverb or sound reflection you'll experience, and that's obviously going to increase noise levels. If it's a meeting room or a boardroom, it can cause issues with speech clarity. So the sound is a type of energy. We describe that energy as vibrations, so they pass from particle to particle in the air, and there's quite a limited range of sound that we can hear. We often refer to the frequency of a sound wave, and that is a measure of not volume or loudness. Frequency is about pitch or tone. More specifically, the frequency indicates how many vibrations a sound wave has in a single cycle. So we measure one cycle as 1 second in duration. Here we have a sound wave with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vibrations. That gives us a frequency of 5 Hertz. Now, you might be thinking this is a little bit technical. Why does it matter? But it makes a big difference when it comes to product specification and selecting different acoustic materials. It's important to understand that no acoustic material or product is going to give you the same amount of absorption across the different frequencies. And the reason for that is your higher frequencies have a quicker vibration. That means they have a shorter wavelength. So the higher the frequency, the shorter the wavelength. The lower the frequency, the longer the wavelength. And the reason that matters is there's a connection between your wavelength and how thick an acoustic material you need in order to absorb those sound waves. So higher frequencies are easy to absorb. You can use a very thin material. So if you had to use a curtain or drapery and you put that in a space, it'll help with the acoustics. But the curtain is a very thin material. So it's going to help with the acoustics, but it's only going to absorb the higher frequencies because the material is just not thick enough. So when we're acoustically treating a space, we want to use materials and products that are well designed to absorb the type of sound that we're going to encounter in that space. Most sound is going to be produced by people who are talking and speaking. So most of that sound is going to be around 250 to 2,500 Hertz. That's the speech frequency range. So that means that we want to use products and materials that are well designed to absorbing those speech frequencies. So a good rule of thumb is any acoustic material that's 2.5 centimeters or more in thickness is going to give you good absorption on the high frequencies. It's also going to give you good absorption on the speech frequencies. So if there's anything you remember, just remember that thicker is better. The thicker acoustic products are better, not just because they're giving you more absorption, but because they're giving you better absorption of human speech and the speech frequencies. All right, then in terms of the objectives, so if you're ever speaking to a client or a customer and you say to them, you know, we need to consider the acoustics in the office, and they say, well, what's that? What does that mean? What are we trying to do? These are the main objectives that we have. You know, firstly, we want to absorb the sound. So anything we put on the ceiling, anything we put on the walls, the main function of those acoustic products is to absorb sound waves. In addition, we also want to look at sound blocking. And this is important when it comes to speech privacy, which, like I said, is important for allowing people to focus and concentrate. So if you have a clear line of sight, if people can see each other, you're going to have direct sound transmission. Doesn't matter how many panels we put on the walls and the ceiling, if you can see me, you're still going to hear me. So having some kind of physical separation between people, whether it's desk-based screens or larger freestanding screens to separate your collaborative areas from your general workstations, the screening and the partitioning will go a long way in terms of improving speech privacy and visual privacy so people are less distracted. That being said, screen and a partition, it's not going to completely block the sound. You'll still have sound that's able to go around or above. So when we need a higher level of speech privacy, that's where we look at sound containment. Best example of that is the fully enclosed acoustic phone booths. So I'm sure everyone's seen them before. Everyone understands how they work. They're a fantastic product, but we can't put everyone in a booth all of the time. And they do come in at a higher price point. So sometimes you will need a booth or a pod. If you need to jump on a call for an hour and you need your laptop, you're going to need a desk, you're going to need a chair, you're going to need electrification, you're going to need ventilation. That's the kind of instance where a fully enclosed acoustic phone booth is the best solution. Sometimes you don't need all of those things. Sometimes it's just a 5-minute or 10-minute phone call. Sometimes you don't need your laptop. Or if you do, it's only 10 or 15 minutes. You don't need your charger, you don't need to plug it in. Those are the kind of situations where something like that, the hug, or even a semi-enclosed booth like that work perfectly fine. They come in at a lower price point. Sometimes they have a smaller footprint. So very often having a combination of the fully enclosed booths and some other acoustic furniture solutions that might not be completely enclosed, but they are semi-enclosed on 3 sides. And that'll go a long way in giving you better speech privacy. You can also see the workstations that we do with the screening and the partitioning. The screens extend beyond the edge of the tabletop. So I'm not sure you've noticed, most people, when they're sitting at a desk, they don't work like this. I mean, some people do, but most people are sat like this. So to have a screen that ends over there doesn't really give you much side-by-side privacy. If the screens actually extend beyond there though, as you see we've done over here, then you're more enclosed and you are going to get a higher level of privacy. And then the displace, if you do any kind of furniture layout, this is something that you're doing already when you design an office space with your collaborative areas and your informal meeting areas. You're designing spaces where we can take a phone call or a conversation that might distract other people, and we can move it to the collaborative space or the informal meeting areas. That creates a bit of distance. So it means we can help minimize those distractions, but it also means a lot of our acoustic solutions should be in the collaborative spaces and the informal meeting areas. Your solutions need to go where the sound is coming from. And very often the collaborative spaces and the informal meeting areas is where the noise will be coming from. So to add your absorption, your sound blocking, and your sound containment in those areas makes a lot of sense.
Richard, sorry for disturbing, but it doesn't only refer to office spaces, but it's also relevant to hotels and restaurants.
Yeah.
So
a lot of what we've done is in the commercial office sector, but there's a lot of demand in hospitality, whether it's hotels, and we've done quite a bit in terms of restaurants as well. Any space where you're going to have a lot of people that are talking and communicating. And this
the more and more for business hotels. There are a lot of hotels where, for example, where we are, sometimes you need some space to have a private conversation, to work a little bit and so on. Whether you stay in the room, but you don't have probably the time or something like that. So we have many hotels just asking us to make some projects for them in order to have some privacy areas where someone can work and just be a little bit private, let's say.
And the acoustic furniture is the easiest way to do that. You know, because if you want to try and acoustically treat an entire space, and it's a very big space, it's going to require a lot of material and a lot of products. But if you're focused on just making certain areas a little bit more private, the acoustic furniture can be a much simpler and more cost-effective way of doing that. You don't have to put panels and everything on the walls and the ceiling. You can just focus on making one small area much more private.
And also the lighting, which can
yeah, we'd use the lighting.
Use of the
Yeah.
lighting budget
Yeah.
together with the acoustic.
Yeah. And I'll show you a couple of examples later how you can incorporate all of them together. But just before I do, on the materials that we use. So at the moment, BuzziSpace is the manufacturer with the broadest collection of acoustic products. We have more acoustic solutions than any other manufacturer. And the reason for that is we use more than one type of material. Most of the industry is using PET. So that's very similar to the material that you see over here.
That's good.
It's made out of polyester.
If you can take a look, if you would take a look.
And most of that, we actually pass a couple of these around over here, because there's that one's slightly different. But most of the PET is very hard and rigid, like this one. So you're a bit limited in terms of what you can do with that material, because you can't bend it. But quite a bit of our felt, and we've got two examples here, the Buzzy Shade and the Buzzy Pleat. Our felt is made in Europe. We use a different process. So we can actually bend and fold our felt in a way that other manufacturers can't do with the hard PET. That's how we can get very interesting designs and organic circular shapes. So we've used the felt for a long period of time. It's made out of 100% recycled PET. It's very important to emphasize the 100%, because most PET products out there, it's about 60% recycled plastic and then 40% virgin new plastic. So they don't use 100% recycled material. We also do a lot in terms of high density foam. So a lot of the furniture, quite a bit of the acoustic lighting is made using the high density foam. The foam is a thicker material than the felt and the PET. So the foam products, you're getting better absorption from them. Particularly with the acoustic lighting. If you're getting more absorption out of a product, normally that means you can use less of them. The more it absorbs, the lower the number you'll need in order to treat a space. We've also launched a new wall-mounted panel that's made from mushrooms. So we don't make this panel, we grow it. We start off with a mold, we put agricultural waste, so mostly wood chips. We seed it with mycelium and then we leave it in the dark to grow for about 8 weeks. Then once it's filled the mold, we take that, we put it in the oven, we bake it, so it dehydrates and removes the moisture from the material. And then we use a special bio-organic paint. So the thinking behind the mycelium panels is circular design, which is where we take materials from nature, we make a product out of it, and then at the end of the product's life cycle, you don't need to recycle it, you just return the product to nature. So you could put it on a compost heap, you could leave it in your garden, and it'll just biodegrade. And there's no toxic materials in it. So it's a truly organic acoustic panel. And then we started using recycled denim and cotton. So the thinking behind this material is we wanted a material that gave us the performance of the high density foam. And you can see it's quite thick, this material, so we get good absorption from it. But it's also sustainable like the felt, in that it's made out of 100% recycled cotton. So if you have any old jeans, you can send them to Evelina and she'll send them to us and we'll shred them up and we'll put them on a paddle. So 100% recycled, and it can be recycled again.
Do you?
Oh, you should be passed around. It's
Yeah.
quite nice and soft.
You want
It's
to
like a nice thing
test
to
it?
touch. Okay, so those are the main materials. In terms of the product categories, so we have over 90 products. It would take too long for me to show you all of the products that we have.
Thank you.
All of that information can be found on the website. It's a very visual website. These are the main product categories that we have. Office dividers, desk partitions, acoustic panels for the wall and the ceiling, acoustic lighting, privacy and phone booths, workstations, and then sofas and acoustic poufs. So in each of these categories, for instance, privacy and phone booths, we'll have multiple different solutions. Like we said earlier, we do quite a bit in terms of offices, but a lot of these can translate through to a hospitality setting, like Daniela mentioned. Particularly some of your slightly more premium hotels, they do want to be able to provide spaces in which people can work. You probably can't necessarily build a whole load of meeting rooms and private offices. It's much easier to introduce these types of solutions, which work quite well in a reception if you just want to provide an alternative little work setting. So depending on the number of people, fully enclosed, semi-enclosed, informal, formal, we have lots of different types of solutions for any particular application. And all of those product categories, they all come back to our three main objectives. Where we want to absorb sound, we want to block sound, and where we need to, we want to contain sound. So anything on the walls and the ceiling, it's there to absorb sound. The screening and the partitioning, it'll absorb sound. If we put it between people, it'll block sound. And then the acoustic furniture, that all absorbs sound. If it's a solution that people can sit in or that they can stand in, then it's also going to give us some sound containment as well. Now, in terms of applying those principles in the redesign of a space, there's three main things that we look at. Obviously, this is an office setting, but these principles apply to any type of space that you might be working in. Now, generally, when we have workstations, we'll often look at desk-based screens. People often ask us, where should we put our acoustic material? If it's a very large space, ideally we want to put our material as close as possible to the source of the sound and its people who are producing the sound. So, if we put a panel on the wall over there, that panel will only absorb the sound waves that reach it. Never mind the sound waves that go in every other direction. But if we take that panel off the wall and we move it closer, we put it right in front of me, having that material closer means that we can capture more of that sound before it's actually able to spread throughout the space. So the screening and the partitioning works very well for that. If the screens are high enough, we'd recommend 60 centimeters from tabletop. That's high enough to cover the mouth line. It's low enough that people still have some visibility over the top of the screens. So if the screens are high enough, we're getting the absorption and we're getting the sound blocking to improve some of the acoustic privacy and the visual privacy. After that, the next thing we do is we often look at the ceiling. Especially if you have a gypsum board ceiling or if you have a concrete ceiling, any hard reflective ceiling. It's always a good idea to look at adding some absorption to those surfaces. Here we've used the acoustic lighting. It doesn't have to be the acoustic lighting, you can use any type of acoustic panel. But the lighting is often ideally positioned in the same way that the screening and the partitioning is, which is to say the lighting is often very close to people. Our pendant lighting is normally above our work surfaces. Here we've got one right above the meeting table over here. We've got another lighting solution above. So you've already got a pendant light that's close to people. It only makes sense if that solution is able to absorb sound as well. So here we've used the acoustic lighting. A lot of the lighting that we do, we can supply it with or without the light. So this is using our light. But if you have existing lighting in a space, you can purchase just the panel and put your own lighting through it. And the same goes with the shade as well. This is our light and our luminaire. But if you had your own one, you could incorporate it with that as well. So there's about 20 different acoustic lighting solutions, and more than half of those you can take it with the light or without the light. So it's very useful to integrate with existing lighting in the space. Right, so we did the screening and the partitioning, then we looked at the ceiling. So in this case, acoustic lighting. The third thing we do is really look at the meeting areas and the collaboration spaces. At the moment, they're very open, they're very exposed. You know, if you were sat at one of these desks, it would be very easy to look straight through to those areas. So if people are having a conversation or a meeting there and you're trying to focus, that's going to be distracting. So these are the spaces that we really look at the acoustic furniture. And there's lots of different solutions. You know, which one is the best solution depends on, you know, is it more social? Is it more formal? Single person, multiple people? How private do you want it to be? You know, do you want it to be semi-enclosed? If it's a formal meeting space, maybe it needs to be fully enclosed. Do you need a table? Do you need electrification? There's lots of different types of solutions for different types of work settings. You know, this is just one example to go about it. And you know, the point I'll make here as well is that unfortunately people don't always budget for the acoustics. You know, they really should, but they don't necessarily allocate a budget for it. Everything that you see over here, this can all be drawn from the furniture budget or from the lighting budget. Part of what we try and encourage specifiers, like I said at the beginning, is to think more broadly. Don't just think of panels on the walls and the ceiling when it comes to the acoustics. There's more functional ways in which you can improve the acoustics in a space without having to spend money on just sticking panels on the walls and the ceiling. You can do it that way if you want, but this particular project, if it was a real space, would have excellent acoustics, and it didn't need an acoustics budget. It just needed a furniture budget and a lighting budget that was applied effectively. So a big focus for us, you know, I've been in the industry for about 20 years. There's loads of people that are doing acoustic panels. Our focus is on the functional acoustics, the acoustic furniture and the acoustic lighting, because that's where the real value lies in terms of effective solutions that are also decorative. These are items that people can interact with and touch, you know, which you can't do with just baffles that you put on the ceiling. Right, we do a lot in terms of meeting rooms as well. Those can be quite challenging. We see a lot of glass. You know, if we had to go back to the 1980s, it wasn't such a big issue. Most meeting rooms had a carpeted floor, which helped with the acoustics, and then they also had a ceiling grid with acoustic tiles in it. So the acoustics were more or less okay. Maybe they needed to add a few panels here and there. But nowadays, you know, people don't want a carpeted floor because it looks old. And they've taken out the acoustic ceiling grids. So you know, we see a plasterboard ceiling, or sometimes even the exposed concrete ceiling. So they've made changes in terms of material choices based on visual aesthetic. You know, more glass because we want natural light, no carpet because it looks old, and no ceiling grid because it looks old. So material choices that are based on design and visual aesthetic, but the consequence is the acoustics in those spaces are terrible. So they've been designed for visual aesthetics and functionality, but they haven't been designed for the acoustics. And if you have too many hard surfaces in a meeting room, it might look great, but the moment you try and call from that space, other people can't hear you clearly because of all the sound bouncing around. I can't tell you how many spaces we've seen where it looks fantastic, but the client is really angry because they've spent all of this money and they can't use the space. And they have to spend more money after the budget has been spent addressing the acoustics. So if you're designing a meeting room and a boardroom and you're using a lot of hard materials in that space, you need to plan early on for adding some acoustic materials. The acoustic lighting works very well because it means that we can make a lot of use of the ceiling space. We don't have to put anything on the walls. For the meeting rooms and the boardrooms, the proposals that we do provide a calculation. So the calculation is just to measure the reverberation time. So we measure how long the sound waves are bouncing around. Once we know that, we know how much absorption we need to add into the space. So the top line is the reverb time in the room at different frequencies before it's been treated. This gray line is the target range. So that's to say, in order to have good acoustics in this space, we need the reverberation to fall below 0.6 seconds. Depending on how big the room is, what it's used for, that determines what our target reverberation time is. And once we've calculated that, then we can determine the product space. So this is the space untreated, and then the second line is what the reverb time would be after the addition of the products that we've spec'd here. And then quite often we'll do a visualization and a rendering of the products. Sometimes we'll do more than one solution for a space. So we can do a cost-effective solution, and we can do a design solution as well. And those will come in at different price points. So this is a service that we're able to offer, and the renders and the visualizations I showed here, this is also something that we can do in Project Care. So Project Care is myself, and then I have an in-house interior designer that works at BuzziSpace. Her and I work together, and the Project Care is a value-added consultancy service that we offer free of charge. So if you're working on a project and you want to consider acoustic solutions, you can send us a brief that has a floor plan of the space, a description of product preferences. So maybe you're wanting to use acoustic lighting, or you only want to use products on the walls, or maybe there's a specific product that you want to use. You just want to know how many of those items you need. Any of those types of questions are things that you can send through to Project Care, and we can assist you. Sometimes we'll do renders and visualizations, and then, like I said, for meeting rooms, we'll do calculations for that as well, and then we put all of that into a PDF proposal that you can then present to your client. So it goes a long way in making things easier, because we had a meeting earlier today, and I was saying that when you're speaking to a client and a customer, that the client doesn't need to be a furniture expert to understand why they need desks and chairs. If they've got a space with 8 people, you don't need to explain to them why they need 8 chairs and why they need 8 desks. They understand. All you need to do is explain to them why this option is better than that option and what you would recommend. Unfortunately, when it comes to the acoustics, if they don't understand the problem, then how are they going to understand the solution? So if you're going to them on a project and you're telling them that they need to allocate budget to put these solutions on the walls or the ceiling, or to buy these particular items, they're not going to say yes if they don't even understand what the problem is. So that's part of why we create these proposals. And like I said, in the proposals, we'll explain in the beginning slides what the issue is, what's causing the problem, so that once they go through that, they can understand why the products are the correct solution for that particular issue.
You show the latest French that we did. So,
what the Roland Garros?
yes, just to give you an additional information. Sorry, this is a service, as Richard said. The BuzziSpace is ready to give you free of charge. What does it mean? You give us the information, any information is important for us, no matter what. Colors that the customer would like to have, if you have some preferences and so on. Very important would be the budget, if the customer has. Because in that case, we can in France, where we had to go, well, I mean, we made 10 different versions. Because each time the customer was not happy about what we were presenting. It's fine, we do it. It was a huge project, so no problem. But if we have the ideas, right, and the information right away, then it's easier for us to get to the point. So don't be afraid to ask. It's just to deep dive and understand where we want to go. Then, if the customer doesn't understand, but why this lamp instead of the other? We are at your disposal. We normally do that. We organize an online meeting because we can explain the reason why Richard decided to use this or that product. And if the customer doesn't understand, no problem. What would you prefer, dear customer? I would like to use this one instead of that one. Good. Live, we can make the change. Richard can make the calculation, so it's not a problem. It's just a cooperation between the whole of us so that we can join the result as fast as we can, and so of course as functional as we can. That's the idea. This is one of the latest that we are doing actually. This is Roland Garros in Paris. So, you know, tennis court. They have a couple of areas. One is a bar and the other one is a restaurant or something like that. They gave us a lot of information, a lot of pictures that, as you see. Pictures are very important as well as videos, because we can see the finishings, we can see the different things of the place. And once again, in this case, they also told us about the quantity of people that they normally have in these rooms, so that we can understand how big the problem is. So we have all these pictures. This is one customer, one of our French customers coming to us with this case of Roland Garros. So we received everything. We already had a plan. Very important, a DWG is fundamental. If you don't have, we can also use a 2D like this one, and we can make our calculations. What we did was a first one. We did the first calculation, and of course, Richard, if he has no information about the budget, he makes all the best solution at all. We are talking about Roland Garros, so normally you see everything on the TV, you see people going there and that. I mean, it was supposed to have a certain budget. They don't have it. So they have very simple lamps, for example. Now, actually, the actual situation is, as you see, they have a very simple aesthetics. Look, and this is Roland Garros. I mean, the players, you know, they get a lot of money for that. So this is the restaurant 1928. Anyway, at the end, they got back to us and said it's too expensive. So what Richard did, okay, then tell me how the budget is, because no matter what the amount, let's say, but we can always find a solution. Then maybe it's not the best one, but if you want to spend that amount, we will give you something for that amount of money. So this is the second version of the project that we did.
So this was what I was saying in terms of, you know, having something more substantial to present to the client, other than to say, you need acoustics, buy these panels, this is how much they cost, you know, because they're not going to be comfortable with that. So the structure, and this one's in French, so I can't read French, but we can do a Polish version of it as well. But we normally start with what our process is, you know, so the briefing of the space, we'll look at solutions and product specification. What are the main things that we're looking to improve, reverberation, privacy, and explanation of what that is, why it's important. We also explain how to read and understand the calculations that we do. Then the specifics of the project. So in this one, we were focusing on ceiling suspended solutions and a few biophilic freestanding items. The product specification was based on acoustic calculations. Then we have the solution slide here. We just did a top view, because you saw it's a very large space, so we weren't going to completely model that. But sometimes we'll do 3D visualizations. If you have a 3D model of the space, like Daniela mentioned, if you have a 3D DWG or CAD file, that's great. Because if you send that to us, we can just drop our products in there and send it back to you. And then we'll have the product specification, so just the fact that all the products are independently tested by a third-party acoustics laboratory. And then we'll have details on the particular products that we suggested with the actual images of them as well. So that's the proposal we can put together. Like Daniele said, sometimes it can be a consultation. They'll come back with feedback, things that they want to change, we can adjust those. We're also happy to jump on a call and present to your clients and customers alongside you if you feel that's necessary. Sometimes they have questions and things that they want to change, and the most effective way to do that is just to have a conversation or a call with them, and we can adjust things while we're on the call with them.
Just to give you another information about, another example, sorry, about a French customer at the end, because we got the job at the end.
It was EDF.
Yes.
You want to pull it up?
Yeah, please. So what we did is, the EDF is the National Energy French company. One of our customers, so in this case Conforti, said, you know, I have this customer and they need to equip their 6 levels offices, so 6 different levels. Okay, now, you know, it's a very important customer and so on. So you know what? We tell Richard to come over. So me and Richard, we left very early in the morning. We went to Paris to see this customer. And then we went home at night. The first thing that Richard did when he arrived to the office, he said, you know, he works, once again, 20 years of experience. You need this, 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 this. The customer said, very simply, I don't like it.
Yeah.
You don't even know the AT, I mean, which product? I don't want it. Okay, what do you want? This, that, and he said, it will never work. It will never work. No, but you know, no, it will never work. But you want those things, we'll show you how it works. And then, once again, with the calculation and the different graphs, we told them, no good, but it's up to you. Anyway, it's a consultancy, so it's also our job to tell them it doesn't work. What they did is, okay, now let's change it, let's make it like this. We made 10 different versions. 10 different versions. And the last one was what Richard said at the beginning.
This was the truth. But it took 10 revisions for them to realize, oh, okay, now we understand.
But this is something that's, I wouldn't say normal, because we do 2 or 3 times. The customer was anyway, the final customer, sorry, was anyway very important, very big and so on. The information for you to know is we are available, but when we have certain information, it's better because we go, once again, direct to the point. Then, if it's a very important project, we can also ask Richard to come by and then we go home at night. It's not a problem, we did it. It must be a very good project. Then once again, the team of Comfort is available for you. So we are here to give you some sort of consultancy approach. We don't tell you need this just because we think it's nice. There is, once again, the design part, but it's a technical approach. And many of our competitors don't have a clue about it. So this makes the difference sometimes. I live in Venice, and we normally say that you must always compare apples with apples. Yeah. So it happens many times that We make a project care like this for one of our customers. I found someone else with, I mean, they are 30–40% cheaper. Okay, let's compare the two products, and you see a huge difference. We also have certain solutions for very, very cheap products and so on, but it's another competition. I mean, it's another world. So always take in mind that this is a higher level, always a higher level. Then, if it's necessary, we also can try to find a solution. But once again, the most important thing as far as Buzz is concerned is functionality and design.
Trying to find the hotel project example. There was one really nice one that looks really good, but I can't remember the name of it. I was asking Margot if she can find it. We do about 360 projects a year.
So one per day?
Yeah, it would be nice if it was one per day. Some days it's none, and then the next day it's like 5 or 10.
I got last week, if I'm not wrong, I got 7–8 from France, only from France. Not just because France is that important. I mean, it's just because no, the French customers that we have got it now. Now they have it as a normal standard, because it's difficult for a final customer to understand how. I mean, I am spending, I don't know, 5,000 euros for what? So we are at your disposal to tell you the reason why. We jump on a call. If it's necessary, once again, you can talk directly to Richard, but he can tell you, well, it's too much. Okay, let's change with this, let's change with the other one, and so on, because it's really something that we can do live. So you really must feel free to contact us. Just please, if it's something concrete, is better, instead of just making something casual, let's say.
I talked to some design studios in France, as you mentioned France, and it's like a strong trend that the restaurants and hotels started to add acoustic products to the spaces, because they realize that the customers, the clients, guests, they don't accept acoustic inconvenience anymore. So they pay attention to how they feel in terms of neuroside, and they started to expect some comfort. So now it's a trend that hospitality customers, they come and they request ideas, what they can install, how they can address the acoustics. So this is a very strong trend in France.
I found the.
You found it, great.
So I'll pull them up now. I found them because the interior designer who worked on this project, she left the company earlier this year, and I sent her saying, oh look, the project that we worked on, remember, they ordered and the client was really happy. I thought it looked great. She told me the colors were horrendous. I don't know, she's the interior designer, not me, but I thought it looked nice. But we'll get your opinions in terms of the color palette. The client chose the colors. So we just worked off what they...
this is
I
Milano.
am to blame.
Yeah. If I can... Blame the client.
This is Milano.
Yeah, I wish I could make them bigger. How do I see?
I better try.
So it was a...
That's an H,
the breakfast room.
NH hotel.
Was the NH?
Yes, I think so. So all the textiles that we can offer you, that are available for you to choose the different finishings, they can make the difference. The first thing I note when I came here is that lamp over there. As you see, the white and red. I've never seen it white and red. It's the first time. Normally it's dark on the lower part and then different colors on the upper part. But this is really some chance that you have to customize the project also. It's not a normal standard gray lamp or a gray panel, sorry, because this one is great, but we have different colors. As you see, this is not a standard, normal, regular color. It's something different. You can also cover them with the different textiles that we have. And once again, it gives you the
And
chance.
then the felt is covered with,
Yes.
with the fabric.
Yes, you can also cover some, one of the sides, for example, of the felt with some particular different textiles that we have to dispose of. And this makes a difference in terms of design also, because it's normal, standard, and simple to make everything neutral. Gray, beige, black, it's fine, okay. Let's try to make something different. And this is the case, for example.
Now the interiors, especially in hospitality, are full of colors.
Yes, it also gives the opportunity to the restaurant or to the hotel to offer something different and tell the customer, look, I'm not like the other ones. I'm a little bit different as far as the look is concerned, as far as the quality of the staying in is concerned. Because as Richard said, I guess that everybody of you experienced staying in a place where you are eating, but at the same time you can't talk to the person in front of you because of the noise.
Yeah, and this was a very difficult project to work on. Because you can see here, this is the video of the space. And you can see based on the detail on the ceiling with all the lighting that they have, you know, we didn't want to suspend from the ceiling. I mean, they've got this drop bulkhead over here. They've got a whole lot of downlighters. They've got pendant lights that you can see are almost indirect casting a pattern. So we couldn't use the ceiling. We didn't want to use screening and partitioning because that didn't make sense. It's a space where people are eating and there's liquid, so you also don't want that to be too close to the fabrics. So, and you can see the walls, I mean, look at it. Some of it's glass, some of it they've got, you know, biophilia, then there's lighting, then there's picture frames and artwork. So there was a certain amount of absorption that we needed to add into the room to be able to make a difference. The difficulty was first identifying where we actually have space for those products. So we managed to find some space on the walls, and then we saw that they had a lot of biophilia plants and stuff in there. So we kind of linked into that a little bit more heavily with the Buzzy planters that we had, because we were mindful the space has an existing design aesthetic. We're going to come in and just add stuff afterwards that's going to conflict with that. It's just not going to be cohesive. It's not going to make sense. So I tackled it from the acoustic perspective in terms of, okay, what's the amount of material that we need? And then the interior designer looked at it in terms of, well, which products can we, you know, visually add into the space that's going to make sense. You know, we had to latch onto a couple of the hanging planters, some of the pebbles on the walls with a little bit more of an abstract kind of orientation. And then, like we said, you know, just a lot more planters that we introduced. And then I've got the images here, which are a little bit bigger, which it should be able to show.
So you see, we have the results starting from the concept, arriving to the pictures. That's also something nice to show you and to have, as far as we're concerned, as a reference.
Yeah. What does everyone think of the colors though?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah? No?
Oh, you see. Yeah.
It's my opinion.
Yeah. I just thought
For
it
a
was.
business hotel, this bright mixture can work,
Yeah.
I think.
I can imagine that.
Because
this is
people from
something,
the offices are already used to the color in their environment. Actually, when we started to work with the office, now it's half of our business. Back in 15 years ago, interiors were quite dual. And the millennial gray was a dominating palette. And it's such a it's sarcastic because our generation was always on the crossroads of new eras. So the escape was gray. Gray means no decision about the color. But luckily, now offices become more homey, people spend their time,
Yeah.
and they start to introduce the color back into home environments because they realize that actually color can work functionally, can brighten up your mood or give you calm and more relaxed atmosphere. So we should not be afraid of color. Sometimes acoustic products are the way to enter the color palette into the dual space.
Exactly.
And this is the example, but one of many, because you can have a lobby of a boring 3-star hotel that was designed 10 years ago, and with acoustic solutions, you can bring them two solutions, color and acoustic.
If I send
So
you a
design,
picture, I think
Yeah, you
fresh
do.
design,
Yeah.
detail,
And it will be visible
Yeah,
enough
acoustic.
to feel the
Yeah.
difference. So there are many ways to walk around the
I
problem.
think it's very important that when you focus on that there is no question about objectively cheaper and more expensive product. It's about what kind of result we are aiming at, and then comparing. Because, for example, I remember this corner here.
It was terrible for sound absorption. And you know, when you stood there, you had to scream.
I remember.
You remember, and when we hang it, you can now speak.
Yes, and it was
normal.
not because screaming was like the reaction because I couldn't understand
Yeah.
properly the person next to me, but this person was very close, so
Yeah.
it was not a problem of how loud in decibels I was speaking. It was about how changed, how modified the voice was, how damaged, and therefore because of the reverberation.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this made me not understand the person who was actually next to me. This is the usual problem of the restaurants and
Yeah.
cafes. So when you focus on that, you will notice that it's not about decibels. This is about if I can understand the
speech
words,
intelligibility.
the speech.
Yeah, well, Hotel
There's-
Warszawski restaurant is a great example because it's a beautiful hotel with a big budget, but restaurant there is terrible. And actually, after 1 hour of conversation and a dinner, you want to run away. And you leave the place and you're like, oh my God, what
Yeah.
just happened? It's a big concrete space because concrete is, of course, it's fancy. But when you sit and across the room, 18 meters away, you hear the cutlery that is put
Yeah.
back.
Probably
You just cannot really stand that. And
Probably
Yeah.
chose perfect example because I had a very interesting presentation, a kind of conference in one of the conference rooms on the ground floor. And actually, at that point, I was already aware of the acoustic topic, and I realized that sitting not that far away, I just could not understand anything. It just I was like trying to catch word by word and to the meaning, and then I realized that the ceiling is concrete, the walls are concrete, the
wood
chairs,
flooring.
wood flooring,
Yeah.
and no textile, no foam, nothing soft. So then I realized exactly it was like a sample of the issue.
And it's very tiring.
In a
because
very,
your brain,
very
in a
tiring.
beautiful design
Yeah.
space.
your brain is having to work even harder to try and there's I can't remember what it's called, but there's a certain, because I mean, sure, everyone's familiar with the topic of neurodiversity, and the idea that people's brains process information differently. And there are a subsection of the population, people who have that specific problem, that when there's a lot of conversations going on around them, they can't isolate a
Yeah.
particular conversation. And for them, there was a guy who even developed an app that on the app you can see the acoustic quality in all of the restaurants, because for these people it's so bad, if they go to the restaurant, they literally can't have a conversation with you. because they can't make out what you're saying, because they can't separate the conversation from everyone. And it's that bad that they needed a nap so they could see beforehand, so they don't waste it. And a lot of the restaurants, some of them, they don't care because they want to flip the tables as quickly as possible. You know, if it's like a McDonald's or whatever, they don't care. They want you to come in and they want you to leave. But the other spaces, the other restaurants that are concerned with the experience and the whole dining experience, those are the ones that recognize that the acoustics is important. And it's one of those things where the focus sometimes is misdirected. You said the concrete looks fancy. So they're designing the restaurant, and all they're thinking about is the visual aesthetic that they want. And they shouldn't be thinking about
And
the
they
visual
ruin the
aesthetic.
experience.
Exactly. If they started off with the customer experience first and allowed that to inform all the other choices that they made, then they would have a correct hierarchy of priority. But sometimes people, it's the same thing that we encounter sometimes with offices, where we go in, they've got massive noise issues, and I explain to them, you should consider screening and partitioning in this space. And they'll say, no, we don't want screens. And they'll say, why? No, we want an open plan look and feel. And then you have to respectfully say to the client, what's your priority? Do you want your office to look a certain way? Or do you want this to be a space in which people are able to work effectively? You know, it's really, and so sometimes people get their priorities muddled up.
I mean, in restaurants it's counterproductive, because in restaurants, especially high-end, you want people to stay and keep ordering and come back with more friends.
Yeah.
If you spend 2 hours and you leave exhausted, then everything is ruined.
Yeah,
People are just tired.
yes, it's your job.
Yeah, and actually it's the biggest problem with also small restaurants that offer good experience and good, they're pricey. But as always, restaurants tend to have too small spaces because it's a cost, fragile business. And then there is a real mess because it's beautifully designed, and there are countless examples in the city center. Beautiful design, really well thought out, glass on the top, and they think that covered sort of sofas permanently built in will fix the problem. No carpets, just decoration, and again you come there and you cannot have a dinner with a conversation. You just have to hop on, hop off, and search for another more quiet.
Ruins the atmosphere.
Going to colors, just to show you something. This is a Swiss clinic for dogs.
For dogs.
Yes.
It's a pretty fancy dog clinic.
Like many things in Switzerland, I believe.
Yeah, well, it's
People really take care.
look at that. Look at the purple
They
version.
have high standards in Switzerland.
Oh, yeah.
Even for the dogs.
Yeah. So see.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make, because the materials, it's an opportunity to add soft materials and textiles into the space. So you can contribute to the color palette quite often, particularly with the acoustic lighting. They like to use it for accent lighting. So you'll have your, it'll be a fairly neutral color palette in the rest of the space, and then they add a little bit of pop with the lighting. So and that just feeds into what I was saying, like you want to get multiple things out of any single solution. In this case, we wanted something that was going to absorb sound, improve the acoustics, add to the decor, and provide illumination.
There was a project care.
And also, if I may make a point, when we think of the public space, in public space we often are obliged, or the investor demands us to use artificial leather or materials that are actually, you still have a soft furniture, but with a certain fabrics that will not contribute to the sound absorptions, like silver text by Spradling, for example. We recently did psychology faculty of Warsaw University. It's an amazing space, beautifully designed. One of the, I think, the winner of this year's city architecture prize. But there are only artificial leathers because they wanted to
Keep it
have
clean.
our products more practical.
Yeah.
And you feel from the distance, from the images, I haven't been there, but you feel there will be struggles with the sound.
It's an important point. So it's the material beneath the fabric that's actually absorbing the sound, and the
Yeah,
reason
if you cut it from either plastic or polyurethane, then
the best way to know whether a fabric is okay for an acoustic application is if you can get a sample of that material. If you can breathe through the fabric, then it's porous enough to allow the sound waves to pass through. But if it's something like pleather or leather, it doesn't matter if you've got foam or a sound absorbent material behind that, because the pleather and the leather, if you hold that up to your mouth, you can't breathe through that. And the sound waves are not able to pass through it either. And you're right, they have a lot of that banquet seating in the hospitality, but they use a pleather material because it's easier to clean. And when you do that, it's not going to help with the acoustics. You have to use a fabric finish that's breathable.
or use products that are hanging.
Exactly, that would be the better way to go about it.
I have questions, if I can.
Yes.
I'm doing a lot of projects for medical,
Mm-hmm.
which is really hard about acoustic. And I was wondering, do you have some solution? Because, for example, I'm not saying about the place where the doctor is waiting for the patient, but these common spaces, for example, reception, where you need a privacy because you are talking about your private things. And do you have some solution for medical projects?
Yeah, so I think generally the best thing is if you can send us the particular project that you're looking at. It's very difficult to give a generic answer to a specific problem. Do you see what I'm saying? If you showed me and you said this was the space, this is where the reception counter is and everything, and I could see it, and you could show me where the waiting area is, then we can kind of figure out what the best solution would be.
But probably the problem is quite the same about
The
you said,
cleanliness, the
because
standard of cleaning
the-
with heavy chemical.
then the medical space will not get permission, because you need to have the spaces that you can clean.
Yeah.